Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Neon. I am here with Geeky Sparkles.
Hello.
And we're going to talk about Spider-Man No Way Home.
Now, I'm going to clarify. We are going to do spoiler-free in the beginning. When we talk about spoilers, we'll give you plenty of notice. We will mention it several times before we talk, so you can turn it off if you haven't seen it or you don't want spoiled.
Yeah, so we're gonna talk about the movie, talk about the performance. We're gonna give our review. We did have a chance to see it last night, and I'm gonna be honest. This is one of those rare times. Mark it on your calendar that Clownfish TV has nice things to say.
Mm-hmm. We actually say nice things all the time. It's
we
just
do.
That he's being facetious when he says that.
People actually don't watch our positive videos. It's the weirdest thing.
Even our videos we criticize, we often say some good points in there too, but they don't hear that point. They just have a shit fit.
Yeah,
so,
they look at the thumbnail, decide that's what the video's about, and then they don't even watch it. But we're gonna say nice things.
I put some mistletoe over my ass, but I don't have any mistletoe.
Anyway, before we get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. Over 247,000 subs happened last night. Thank you. We're hoping to hit 250,000 by Christmas, or at least New Year's.
Yeah, I don't think it's a hit by Christmas, but maybe New Year's.
New Year's might be good. So if you guys could check and see if you're still subscribed. YouTube has a tendency to unsubscribe people without their knowledge. I don't know why they do this, but they do. So please check and see. Anyway, what should we talk about first? We want to talk about the audience reaction, the box office, because none of that's spoiler filled.
Okay, let's talk about the box office first. So it turns out the media is like losing it because they're like, oh my gosh, Spider-Man is breaking records. And when I say breaking records, I'm not talking about the for a pandemic or pandemic era records. We're talking across the whole board records here.
Yeah, and I want to be clear here too, because people, I know they're going to call us on this, and they're going to be like, "You're just a bunch of Disney haters," but you're admitting that this movie made money in the MCU.
We've been saying it was going to.
Yeah, and the MCU is fine. Disclaimer: this is more of a Sony product than a Disney product.
We have said for months that Spider-Man was going to kick everybody's ass.
Oh, absolutely.
We have said that the entire time, and this definitely was more a Sony product than a Disney product. It completely was. So the Thursday preview night. Box office may end up it's going to be number 1 or number 2 of all time. Not just pandemic, not that excuse, of all time. It depends how much it comes out that it does, because Revenge of the Sith did 13,859 for preview Thursday.
I'm actually surprised by that.
I am too.
Yeah.
But we know it did around 50 million. We just don't know exactly what. So it's going to be either number 1 or number 2 of all time for preview night. Because it's completely beat Matrix Reloaded at 37.5 million. It beat that like by a long shot.
Yeah.
Now, it is important to note, I'm going to give comicbook.com some credit here, because they pointed out that on the preview nights, some theaters were releasing movies at like 10 o'clock, 12 o'clock. You know, we went and saw it at 4. So they squeezed more showings in on preview night, which might, 1, elevate the total, and 2, it might make it flatline a little bit for the rest of the weekend.
Yeah, because it used to be that previews were technically the midnight showing, and then they moved it back to like 7 or 8 o'clock.
Yeah,
and
we went at 4.
Just to open the damn movies on Thursday, because that's when they're doing it anyway.
It's kind of like what Black Friday used to be. They kept creeping it so it was fine. Like, it was like, they have it like weeks before now.
Yeah.
They close on Thanksgiving, but you have sales for weeks ahead of time. It's kind of like that. So, I mean, that you have to take that into consideration. I thought that was a valid point and worth mentioning.
Yeah, it's also like the weekend box office take. Depending on who you ask, it's either 2 days, 3 days, or 5 days.
Right.
A weekend.
Yes. So, consider that in here too. So it might end up being number 1, but maybe it was technically number 2, but it's still in the top 2 of all time Thursday openings. They're predicting this is going to do 150 million domestically, but as we've seen throughout the year, predictions are all over the place, so who the hell knows?
Yeah, I think that's actually realistic. I mean,
I think it is too.
Considering that Venom 2 did 90 million. And they were over the moon. And again,
that was Sony. Is that what you're going to say?
I was going to say, let's be honest. Now, Sony, for us criticizing them, at least in the video game side of things, for the censorship and some of the weird decisions they made regarding PlayStation, this year they're batting 1,000 for movies. Like, I'm not even going to mince words. Ghostbusters Afterlife.
Also very good. Venom 2, very good.
And now Spider-Man No Way Home, which is as much, if not more, of a fan pleaser than Ghostbusters Afterlife. And I have to admit,
not in a bad way.
Not in a bad way. I mean, I said it is absolutely the ultimate fanfic, but in a good way.
Yeah, which we're not going to talk about that to the end of the video, so don't panic, no spoilers yet. Yeah, it was really, really, really good. I will say the theater we went to was full.
It was completely full.
It was not when we saw Venom and stuff, but it was very, very full here. The last time I seen that full was Endgame. And so so when they argue, well, for pandemic totals, no. This is for before pandemic. It is comparable to before pandemic.
I don't ever want to hear another excuse. The movie would have done fine. It would have done fine if it wasn't for the pandemic. Eternals would have done fine if it wasn't for the pandemic, because they sure as hell could show up for Spider-Man.
Right. And right now people are worried about other variants coming up, whether you believe that crap or not, but they are across the board, and it still did this well. So, yeah, I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, that excuse is dead now. We can't use that one anymore.
Yeah, the next closest one for an opening weekend, the top one this year was Venom, domestically. Venom Let There Be Carnage was a little over 90 million. That was the top box office opening weekend we had. The next one was like Shang-Chi, and it was like 78 or 80 or whatever the heck it was. I forget now. And it was the next one down. So this is definitely going to go past those. It's 50 million already on Thursday. Yeah. It's going to blast past all these films for sure. But we've been saying this for months. So those people see Spider-Man's beating everything. It's like, no shit, Sherlock. We've been saying that for months. And ironically, Sherlock was in this movie. Anyway. One version of him.
One version.
The other version was it was great when you had both of them in like the Avengers movie. You had two Sherlocks at once.
Yeah, that was a missed opportunity. So should we get into, look at this. 5,000 plus verified ratings, 99% audience score, 95% on Rotten Tomatoes critical score.
I'm sorry, I'm still stuck on the Avengers thing. If you have two of them at once, is it double no shit Sherlock?
No shit.
Or does one cancel the other out?
I don't know.
So there's lots of shit Sherlock.
Well, now we call them variants, according to Loki.
Variant shit Sherlocks?
No, variant Sherlocks.
Anyway, sorry. My head was stuck on that. Yes. So here we go. Rotten Tomatoes, grain of salt type thing, but.
Yeah, but the audience scores are good. Most of the reviews I've seen, or the shout outs I've seen on Twitter from our circle, have been pretty positive. Again, this is a fanfic, absolutely. But my God, they got it right.
But it was a good story.
I would give it, and I don't throw praise around very casually, but I would give it a 9 out of 10.
Oh yeah, easy. And I would watch this one again and again. Like I'm already like, can we get back to the theater again? But I don't have time. Yeah. But I would if I could.
And I think a lot of people will. I think a lot of people will watch this one again and again, compared to like the Eternals, which is like, oh yeah, I sat through that for 3 hours.
I think too, this is one that you're gonna catch new things each time you see it.
Yeah, there are a lot of Easter eggs, and there are some things that it was like blink and you miss it. And I kind of wish I was able to, freeze frame to look at and see, like, is that what I thought it was? Or was that shape that thing I thought it was?
We're not giving spoilers yet. Don't worry.
No.
But yeah, so we already had, now granted, it's only been out like not even a day or a day in some theaters. It's 99% audience score, which can change. 95% critical score, which can change. But I don't think it's going to change a whole lot because everybody is liking this movie.
Yeah, I would say that this is to the Spider-Man franchise what Afterlife was to Ghostbusters. And I think I'm a little
except
encouraged.
The critics agree.
Yeah, except the critics agree this time. But the reason that critics were so salty last time was they negated Ghostbusters.
Yeah, it's like
2016.
What we saw with Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah.
They critics shilled for White Knighted for Last Jedi for so long, called people names, wrote hit pieces on fans who didn't like it for so long that when they walked it back for Rise of Skywalker, they lost their shit.
Yeah.
Same with Afterlife.
Yeah, this basically is, I can't say too much without getting, but
we'll talk about that later.
It is comparable to Afterlife in the way I believe that they treat the characters and the Spider-Man franchise. I think it's
does address one of the big complaints. We can say that without giving spoilers. It does address one of the big complaints, which was that it was basically Iron Man Jr.
By the end of the movie, Tom Holland's Spider-Man is his own Spider-Man. Yes.
So we'll let that. That doesn't spoil anything. Yeah. So we'll let that go.
In fact, I would say, and again, this isn't really a spoiler, but a lot of this movie feels like it's tying off loose ends, but it's also a soft reboot of Spider-Man in the MCU that going forward we can have a more traditional Spider-Man.
I agree. I agree. And that doesn't give too much away.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the critics are liking it. The audiences are liking it so far. It's like I said, it's only one day in. But the box office is destroying it. I can say we both really thought it was good. I will tell you, without ruining it, a lot of times when the audience is like making comments and stuff, it annoys me. But in this case, and I'd say the case like Afterlife, it actually added to the energy of the theater in a good way.
Yeah, I was surprised. There was a lot of, because I know even when we went to go see the Star Wars sequel movies, there wasn't like palpable energy from the audience.
It was the first one, but after
Force Awakens when Han showed up, people were happy, and then they killed Han. Spoiler, they killed Han Solo. And then people were like, what the hell? You know?
So,
oh, hey, at least we're getting Luke. Pfft.
Oh, however, there is a rumor that Han might be coming back. I covered it on Pirates and Princesses. There's a rumor, and like I said, it's a rumor, so take it with a grain of salt. But the rumor is that Harrison Ford did film some scenes for an upcoming show, either The Mandalorian 3 or Book of Boba Fett. But I'm probably thinking Mandalorian. And they're using de-aging technology like they did with Luke, with Mark Hamill.
Well, I can see Boba Fett, though, because they're rivals.
I know. I thought that, too. One of those is what they're thinking it is, and they believe that he filmed it. Again, we don't know that yet, but that is the rumor. Who the hell knows? Because everything changes every other day.
No,
but anyway,
Alden Ehrenreich.
No, not yet.
Actually, if they put him in there and put Harrison Ford's face on him, like they did on YouTube, it would actually
might work.
Yeah.
But the theater, yes, the people in the theater, it was normally that kind of stuff annoys me. Like we went to see Men in Black. Was it the second one?
The second one, yeah.
And which unfortunately, that dog talking. Is that a dog there? The dog's talking. And
it was just us and this other group of people, and they wouldn't freaking shut up.
Shut up the whole way, yeah.
But this, there were several places in this movie where the audience was cheering.
The audience reacted in a good way.
Yeah.
And it was exciting. It made it more fun. We had to set a little bit apart from our kids because we arranged it that way for a reason. But anyway, they were even smiling. I noticed when people in the audience would react, I look over and my kids would be like, reacting with them and stuff. And I was like, yay,
Yeah. Yeah. So it's definitely, we've said before, we said with the Venom review too, where I really get the feeling that going forward, at least for me, the future of Marvel movies is going to be with Sony.
Yeah, at this point, yeah.
Because I'm more excited about the stuff Sony's going to do, and especially the setup in this movie and some of the doors that are left open. I'm like, and Spider-Man's always been my favorite Marvel character. I read, even when they had like 4 or 5 Spider-Man books a month, I bought them all.
That doesn't surprise me. I think a lot of people for years, Spider-Man was their favorite character.
Yeah,
and Marvel
until they ruined him in the comics.
Well, I think until the MCU came along too. I think because then people started looking at these other characters and they identified with those characters, not necessarily the comic book version of them.
Yeah.
But for the comic book people, a lot of them, Spider-Man was like the bomb. That was their thing.
Yeah, but I'm actually excited. And again, just to clarify, because people are like, you're a bunch of Disney haters. This is a Sony product that borrows, it's in the MCU, and they borrow, it's not a spoiler, they borrow Doctor Strange. But other than that, it is very much a Sony Spider-Man movie.
And it's done really well. And I'll tell you what, too, we do know that there's going to be more Spider-Man movies after this.
Yeah.
At least 3, they said. Tom Holland for sure is in one of them. I don't know if he's in all 3. But they did say the MCU is being is still being tied. They're working with Disney still and Marvel on those ones. So we know they're still going to be connected in some way. But it's going to be a lot more, I think, acceptable to fans moving forward.
Yeah, let's just put it this way. They could take Spider-Man in a completely different direction out of the MCU, and I wouldn't feel the least bit bad about it at this point. I'd be like, okay, he had his time with the Avengers, and let's just let's go back to being Spider-Man.
Yeah, the only bad thing is that leaves Captain Marvel as I don't give a shit. The new Iron Man Jr. Anyway, so but we're going to talk about spoilers here in a minute. Before we get into spoilers, I'm going to tell you, if you like Spider-Man, if you like Sony Spider-Man, if you like MCU Spider-Man, you need to go see this movie. It is really good. And some of you might not like the movie, and that's completely fine. If you don't like it, you are allowed to not like it. I am not going to make fun of you or make any comment whatsoever to you, because that you are entitled to not like it if you don't like it. We like this one. I'd recommend people going to see it. Is it perfect? No, there's some things in it that
there's some stuff
we'll talk about in the spoiler stuff, but it's darn near close. So
it is This is like a fanboy's wet dream. Like seriously, like if they actually sat down, like, oh my God, what would be the ultimate Spider-Man movie? And if they sat down and came up with a fanfic, that would be this movie.
Yeah, okay. So now we're going to tell you right now, in order to progress further, we're going to have to talk spoilers.
Yeah, because...
So if you don't want to hear anything spoiler related, I would turn this video off right now because we do not want this ruined for anyone because people are doing their damn best to ruin it. Stay off of like social media right now. We are not even going to put anything in the headline or the picture that would spoil it.
No.
So turn us off now. We'll give you a few seconds. If you're still listening, it's your own fault.
Okay, so the big spoiler is Spider-Man is in the movie.
It is.
Yeah. Actually, no.
But how many times is Spider-Man in the movie?
Almost all the rumors. There were some red herrings. Almost all the rumors were true. Yes, there are 3 Spider-Men in the movie. What is surprising, and I'm very surprised, because the rumor was that Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire would only show up at the very end to save Tom Holland's ass. That is not what happens.
True.
They spend probably half the movie together.
It's so good.
And they're doing a lot of the things that fans would like completely geek out. Like you've got a room full of Peter Parkers sciencing together. Mm-hmm. They're comparing notes on web shooters. There is a pretty lengthy, talk about like how come Tobey Maguire has organic web shooters and they don't.
And then Tom Holland Spider-Man's like, do they come out from other places besides?
Yeah, I'm like,
that's such a guy thing to ask. Such a guy thing to ask.
But it's funny, and the thing is that it actually greatly exceeded my expectations. Because I kept thinking, okay, this is going to be. And look, people have mixed opinions of the MCU version of Spider-Man. He is Iron Man Jr. It is kind of, goofy ass humor, and it's very, current year humor, and people aren't really into that. I get it. And there is that in this movie, but it's also this massive love letter to the Sony. Mm-hmm. Sony.
If you love Spider-Man in general, the Spider-Man films, you're going to like this one.
Doctor Strange is in it, but the only reason Doctor Strange is in it is as a plot device. His job is to show up and make it possible for all the Spider-Men to get together.
But he's good when he's in it.
He is good when he's in it. Yeah, Cumberbatch is good. Yeah.
He is really good. And at the end, especially, I think he sold it so well. Like the stakes and like how he said goodbye kid and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So he did a good job. It was well worth it. But yes, the 3 Spider-Men are in it, and when Andrew Garfield walks through the portal and takes his mask off, the whole theater just went nuts.
Oh my God, yeah. I saw reactions on YouTube. People were filming. There were theaters around the world because Andrew Garfield, he didn't flat out deny it, but he was there.
He kind of did flat out deny it.
He said I'm not in it.
But everybody kind of knew he was in it. It was like everybody kind of figured.
And I will say his Spider-Man. Okay, so this movie ties a lot. We'll get into it. One, Charlie Cox is also in it.
I know. I was so fucking excited. Sorry, flipping excited. I was like, oh my God. There's Daredevil.
And he has a great
funny
scene. He's not in it very much, but it's interesting, and I'm sure this was planned, that they tie his appearance with Kingpin's appearance in Hawkeye.
I'm so happy about both of them being back. So happy.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So I want to see, as a comic book fan, because I used to read a lot of the Spider-Man and Daredevil team-ups, because they shared Kingpin as, one of their biggest, enemies. And I'm like, okay, we've set that up. That's possible now. We've got Matt Murdock. It's confirmed he's in this universe. We can do a Daredevil Spider-Man team up at some point, and I'm totally on board with that. What this movie does, and I didn't think it was possible, it's actually more than I thought it was going to do. I thought it was just going to be like, oh, it'll be fun to see basically the Sinister Six -1 in a movie together. And why recast Doc Ock and Green Goblin when you had the perfect Doc Ock and Green Goblin? Mm-hmm. And yada, 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 and they'll have a fun little adventure.
They were just as good in this one. I mean, William Dafoe especially.
Oh, yeah, he was really good.
He was amazing in this one.
And they clearly listened to fan feedback because they fixed Electro.
Yes.
He gets close to his comic book costume. When he's powered up, you actually see the star face thing, which is cool. And he actually talked about how lame he was in the other universe, and now he's got an upgrade. They fixed Green Goblin's costume.
They gave him more time than they gave him before.
They did. And I actually like this version of Electro much better. And I think that was probably Jamie Foxx. He's probably like, because Amazing Spider-Man 2 was not that good. It really wasn't. And it's a shame because Andrew Garfield was wasted, you know. And I think for me, he always reminded me more of like the Peter Parker I read in the 80s, where he was kind of beyond the dork. He was still a smart guy, but he wasn't as dorky as he was in high school. And so for me, it was like I always liked his Spider-Man because it was like, this is kind of the one I grew up with.
Plus, he was really good in this. I mean, he sold the emotional stuff. Like, you know, he's still upset about what happened to Gwen Stacy and all that. Yeah. And he did such a good job, guys.
What this one does is it ties up not just like Tom Holland's Spider-Man in the MCU and sets him off in a totally different direction. It also ties up plot threads with the other two Sony series. And it does it in such a way that, I mean, yeah, they have to bring magic into it, multiverse shit, whatever. But it also leaves the door open. I'm like, wait, they technically at this point, they could go back and do an Amazing Spider-Man 3. They technically could do a Spider-Man 4 that takes place years after.
I wish they would.
You know?
I mean, I don't know if they will, but they could, and it would be amazing if they did.
Because they still got it.
Yeah, they do. They
Andrew
are
and
great.
Toby still got it.
The one part that I thought was the one thing that took me out of it was when they sat there, they get talking about stuff, and it is a little bit like, I'm going to crack your back and all that. That was a little bit, you know.
I was like watching that scene. I got to tell you, that was kind of cringy. It was funny that they were bantering, and I liked the banter, but it was kind of cringy because he's like cracking his back. I'm like, does that don't look like they're doing stuff? Because like all the shippers are like,
really, I didn't think that, but
you know, like Spider-Man on Spider-Man.
You think that would be the first thing I'd think of was shipping because we always cover it, but it wasn't. It
seemed like an outtake. It should have been an outtake.
It should have been an outtake, but it was fun to watch them together. And then they had them all in the lab and they did the finger point thing. Like they weren't in their costume, but they were pointing at each other. It was really good. And then they all talk about how they all had to work alone all the time. And then it was funny because he said about, well, I'm a part of a team before, you know, the Avengers. And they're like, great. Who are the Avengers? You know?
Yeah, is that a rock band? No, it was funny too because, you know, I always wondered, and I don't know how many other, you know, comic book movie fans wondered, like, is there a version of Captain America, Hulk, you know, Wolverine, whatever in those universes? Just we never saw them because of rights issue, and apparently not.
No, because
just Spider-Man.
Now then Sony can do more with them.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's probably why.
So that's, you know, pretty interesting. But yeah, the fact that they tied off and they redeemed, and that was actually the plot of the movie. It wasn't like, hey, we're just going to bring these villains in for a cameo. It's like, we're going to bring them in and we're actually going to try to fix the things that went wrong because the whole plot of the movie is, you know, Peter Parker, of course, you know, they gave this away in the trailer. He wants people to forget he was Spider-Man. He was out as Spider-Man, except for the people he cared about. And then Doctor Strange F's up the spell because
it wasn't actually him. It was actually Peter F's up the spell.
F's it up,
like,
and yeah.
Because he says, I don't want anybody who knew I was Spider-Man before knows I'm still Spider-Man. But he didn't say which multiverse.
Right.
So everybody who knew he was Spider-Man, Peter Parker, Spider-Man were...
Yeah, so that's where things get messy. That's the only thing I can... And I'm hoping that, you know, Phase 4, Phase 5 is about maybe consolidating the multiverse, because if not, things are going to get really messy between Loki
It's going to turn out to be the way the comics went, which, you know, can get not so good.
Yeah, it can be, because there are no stakes at that point. Like, everything, you know, if this Captain America dies, that's okay. We just recast him and bring him in from another universe.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. It gets to be like too much and too convoluted, and I hope they don't go that way. Now what I thought was cool was they had Andrew Garfield again, and he saves the MJ from this universe.
Yes.
And you know, and that it was really done again. Andrew Garfield did a great job because it meant something to him because he couldn't save Gwen.
Yeah.
So he saved MJ, you know.
So he got, I would say his Spider-Man got the most closure because he really got, Andrew Garfield got the short end of the stick when they rebooted Spider-Man again, but into the MCU. You know, I know he was pretty upset about it, you know, because he was like, what the frick?
Oh, I would love to see another movie with him in it.
They could do that now. I mean, that's the thing. They could do that now. But yeah, the plot is about going, you know, and basically fixing, because Peter finds out, the Tom Holland Peter Parker finds out that you know, they took all the villains from their respective universes right before they were going to die, except for Sandman. That doesn't make sense, but whatever. Maybe it was like down the road and he was going to die. Bring them to the MCU, and you know, they're going to send them all home. But then he realizes, oh, we send them home, they all die. So I'm sending them to their deaths, and Doctor Strange is like, well, who gives a shit? That's what they're supposed to.
Yeah.
They did to themselves. They basically do. Like, all Spider-Man's villains basically kill themselves, you know? But he's like, no, I can fix them. And after he talks to Aunt May, basically, we don't give up on people, whatever, and that comes into play later. So he tries to rehabilitate the villains.
But he can't do it all himself. He tried, he failed with the Green Goblin serum and stuff. But that's when the other Spider-Men come in, because they have other strengths and they know how to deal with other people they've been fighting. So they are able to help him, fix these people.
Yeah.
But the one person brought up a point too with the villain, and I thought that was true. Like, I think it was the Green Goblin. He's like, he wants to fix us, but they're gifts. Why? What if we don't need fixed? And that is a valid point, because it was. I thought it was a little bit. Why is it his decision if they need fixed? You know what I'm saying?
And the thing is they didn't die necessarily because they had powers. They died because they were
assholes.
Yeah, they were going to go down this road anyway. They just happened to have powers when they went down this road. And
so it basically blames all their evilness on their powers. Which, if that's the case, then Spider-Man should have turned evil with his powers. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, the only two I would give I would say that's correct, because Sandman was never
and
evil.
he wasn't in this one either.
No, he wasn't. They actually, that's the thing that gets me too. Like, I was really worried. I had a conversation with somebody on Twitter. They wrote me DMs last night, and they're like, I have concerns about these things. And they don't Jake Skywalker any of the characters. Like, these versions of the characters, other than Electro, who I think was improved, are the same versions of the characters you remember from the movies they were in. I mean, Dr. Octopus, it's worth going to see it just to see more Doc Ock. Doc Ock and Green Goblin were very, very good. They were on point.
I mean, they all were, honestly.
Yeah.
I really do. Now, I want to talk about the one thing we said about it may come up later. Well, one of the complaints was that in this Spider-Man universe, there was no Uncle Ben. So there was nothing to have him, push him to be like, the other Spider-Man's Uncle Ben died. So in this one, they fixed that problem, but it's Aunt May who dies, which no one saw coming.
It was kind of leaked. They had like a lot of...
Well, I didn't see it coming because I stayed away from that shit.
They had a lot of red herrings. They're like, oh, Ned could die, Aunt May could die.
They did.
Tobey Maguire,
and they kind of hinted about that in the movie. Squid King thinks that Tobey Maguire Spider-Man was supposed to die. And I have to kind of agree with him. If you see how it goes down, I think maybe he was, and they undid that choice. But we don't know that for sure. But it does seem like that was the intent originally, and they changed it.
Well, I know that Kirsten Dunst was supposed to be in it at some point. So that would imply that he goes back to his universe, and maybe it's just to say goodbye to MJ or something. I don't know. But supposedly because of COVID, they couldn't get her. I don't know.
Well, they didn't kill him, which was probably for the best.
Yeah.
They did make like some little foreshadowings that could be Ned. It could, and I think Tobey Maguire Spider-Man was supposed to die. Even by the music, I think that was the intent. But they changed it for whatever reason. But Aunt May does die, which is necessary because they all have to be told that phrase, with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah.
And, everybody else heard it from Uncle Ben. He hadn't heard it. He got it from Aunt May.
Yeah. And that's going to be I know it's going to be a major complaint, a major sticking point with people, because that is like, Ben Parker is like one of the most pivotal characters in the Marvel universe.
But they had to do something to put it back. And they couldn't use Uncle Ben.
Yeah, see, that's another thing, too. I always wondered, was there an Uncle Ben? Because we never saw the origin story.
Never mentioned Uncle Ben ever.
Just, I got bit by a spider, and now I'm Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Where'd the spider come from? Was there an Uncle Ben?
So he had to have a catalyst, but in his case, it was Aunt May.
Yeah, and the thing is, though, it works. So not only did they tie off some loose, threads with the other Spider-Man, including, Andrew Garfield, who gets, to kind of come to terms with Gwen Stacy, which I thought was great. And they fixed some of the villains, and Doc Ock, I don't know if he's going.
Well, they had Tobey Maguire kind of facing Doc Ock and Green Goblin again in a way that he's been thinking about it for years, how to help them, and he wishes he could have done things different. So now he was able to save them. Yeah, in a way. So for him, that was his closure, because neither one of them were bad guys. In their cases, the science did wreck them. Especially Doc Ock. I mean, he just had a bad run of it, lost his wife, and he got all fried with the tentacles. But they didn't start out as cruel, bad people, and they were brought back to who they were, which I thought was good. Yeah, and that's most Spider-Man villains. And that's the thing, too. Like, Tom Holland's Spider-Man,
I guess you could call it like Harry Potter syndrome. Like he didn't have to suffer that much.
Right.
Like,
So they had to make up for that.
like he lost his parents and whatever, but he pretty much had like everything handed to him. And that was Tom Holland's like, hey, I'm Spider-Man. Then like a week later, here comes a billionaire to give me all my
And now
gear.
I'm an Avenger.
And now I'm an Avenger. And
I mean, he still had to fight for things, but it wasn't on the same level as Spider-Man. But that the origins should have been for Spider-Man.
Spider-Man, he joked a lot, whatever, but he had catastrophic loss. And this, you can tell, and you can even argue now that since there wasn't an Uncle Ben, that's why Tom Holland's Spider-Man seems like he's so immature compared to the other two.
It could be. I also noticed that they made sure, like, Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man in comparison to Tobey Maguire, he's like, I became very bitter and I don't want to see that for you, because they kind of had different tones when they lost people. And I thought that was cool because you had one that became bitter and one that didn't. And then, and I think that this supposed to, when him saving MJ was supposed to have helped him overcome that, and talking to them was supposed to help him overcome that. But it was interesting because when you have something so catastrophic in your life, you either can go, usually people go one of two ways. They either, become very bitter and very upset, and they could go towards the bad, or they feel like they want to do more to help make the world a better place or whatever, so that they can, help who they can help, and they go that way. And I think that's, the fine line that people walk. And with Spider-Man, he always chooses to go the hero. But something had to happen.
Yeah, even with that, and I'll give him props for that. Like, that was a very Spider-Man thing to do for Tom Holland, to be like, Doctor Strange doesn't give a shit, but I'm literally sending these people back to their deaths.
That's a very Spider-Man, Peter Parker thing to do.
Yeah, like, I can't do that. I just can't do that. As against every fiber of my being, I cannot send these guys, even if they're trash bags, I can't send them to their death if I have a way to fix it. So the lengths he goes to try to fix it, that is a very Peter Parker thing to do. But Tobey Maguire. Yeah, Tobey Maguire does grow up in this one because he's like 40s or 50s now. But Tom Holland's Spider-Man grows up a lot in this movie. And by the end of the movie, there's another spell that's cast that basically everybody in the world forgets Peter Parker,
including Doctor Strange.
Including Doctor Strange. So, as I understand it, everybody knows there's a Spider-Man. The Avengers probably remember working with Spider-Man. They just don't remember Peter Parker as being Spider-Man.
Spider-Man's still there, and they remember Spider-Man. They just don't remember that Peter Parker is Spider-Man.
Even Happy doesn't remember Peter Parker. We have at the end of the movie. But what that does is it gives the MCU version of Spider-Man a clean slate. There's no Aunt May. There's no Happy giving him tech. There's no safety net with the Avengers. His friends forget who he is even. By the end of the movie, we have Peter Parker, presumably a college student, in a ramshackle apartment, making his own Spider-Man costume and checking the police scanner for activity. And he goes out swinging in a costume that looks an awful lot like Andrew Garfield's costume. And I fucking love that. Yeah. Because that's what we need. He should have started that way. But they fixed him. It was kind of like the Scarlet Witch. Like, we took the long way around to finally get her back to what she should have been in the first place. And that's what this movie is. It's basically, I guess, like the WandaVision of they fix the MCU Spider-Man, but they had to do it in a very convoluted way.
Something else that's interesting too is the fact that I saw people talking about this before, and they said that if everyone forgets who Peter Parker is, Peter Parker Spider-Man, then they were worried because Vulture was such a good villain, but now he knows who Peter Parker is, and he was all, I'm not going to out him because he saved me and my family, and I now he doesn't remember. Yeah. So that could bring Vulture back as a villain.
Yeah, it could.
They brought that up. People brought that up. Now, the end credits. There's two. One's a mid credit roll. One's a after credit, post credit. The mid credit one is with Venom, and it brings up how he could end up in this universe. Yeah. And then the final credit. I'm not going to tell you. This wasn't even a spoiler. I could have said this before. Basically, a commercial for the Multiverse of Madness was all it was.
Yeah, it literally was a trailer for the Multiverse of Madness.
That's what the other end credit is.
And the vibe I'm getting is that Doctor Strange is basically in deep doo-doo for casting this spell.
He was in deep doo-doo before, but I guess he's in deeper doo-doo.
So what gets me, though, is I'm trying to figure out, so the way the spell worked was if you knew Peter Parker was Spider-Man, you got called to the MCU, which means Tom Hardy's Venom had to have known Peter Parker was Spider-Man. He licked the screen when he saw it,
Yeah, because he knew, because that's why he got called there.
But he also said, you'd be surprised the things I know at the end of Venom 2. He's like, I've got all this cosmic knowledge, and you'd be surprised. So I have to wonder, was there another Peter Parker in the Venom
That's a good point.
universe? And was he, in a roundabout way? Well, no, because he came from space. I don't know. I mean...
But he had to have known, or he wouldn't be there. So, yeah, that's a very good point.
What'd be really interesting is if all the Venom symbiotes across the multiverse were actually like a connected consciousness. Like it's all the same.
That might be what they're trying to do, and that may be what they're trying to imply, because that's a very good point, because how would he know?
Yeah.
So that is interesting. That is a very interesting idea.
Yeah, so there had to have been something
and
there.
And then that piece left behind would know.
Yeah.
Unless it was erased.
And
so I don't know.
Seeks out Peter Parker.
I don't know. It's gonna get interesting. I think from here on out, I'm much more excited about Spider-Man moving forward.
Yeah, I am. Because that was one of the biggest complaints I had. It was one of the only complaints I really had with the MCU Spider-Man was I liked Tom Holland. I know a lot of people didn't like him, but I did not like the fact that he was dependent on the Avengers and Tony Stark, for everything basically. And he shouldn't have been. And now he gets a fresh start. It's kind of like the One More Day, but for the movie universe. And also, we could do an Amazing Spider-Man 3. And it would be fine. We could do that.
And we could do more. I think people would go. I think people would love to see it. Judging by the reaction of them seeing them in the theater, and I think everybody kind of knew Tobey Maguire was coming, but just by the reaction of them showing up and how people reacted, I think they totally could do it. People would flock to see it.
Yeah. So I guess we'll wrap this up. Go see the movie. It's good. Again, thanks Sony, not Disney. I think this is more of a Sony thing, and I'm more excited now about where Sony is going to take the Spider-Man characters than I am about MCU Phase 4, to be honest.
Well, you know what? Here's the thing, too. Maybe MC would do better if they weren't pushing agenda so damn much, because this one didn't.
It didn't.
I mean, you could argue a couple spots that it was pushing like pro-women things, but with Aunt May or with MJ, but I really don't think that was the intent. So I think it was just more for story. So if you want to succeed with the MCU, go back to being about story.
All right, so we're going to wrap it up?
Yep.
All right, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. We'll talk later.
Bye.